All right, guys. Thank you so much for coming over to our ADU seminar. The reason why we put this together is because, with all due honesty, we've take about an average of 30 to 45 minutes to explain the process of an ADU and how it all works. So I figured, why not share this information, with you guys in a small seminar. I have the pleasure of meeting Tang.
Yes,
Uh,
everyone.
Tang is a he's an engineer
Yeah.
which does literally all the engineering, but he also does all of the drafting, which I thought, what the heck, is the best thing you can possibly find. Somebody that understands drafting and engineering is very rare, because I've encountered over the years that the drafter says A and the drafter says Z. And you're like, okay, what the heck? Like, how do we go about putting this together? So I wanted him to be here so he can talk to you guys about the differences of ADUs and all the other pertaining information. So ADUs is not a new thing. In reality, it's been something that has been going on for a long time. These are called additions. We used to call them additions. ADUs. The fancy name of ADU just came about recently because, as you remember, the state of California, supposed to be in a world of hurt with with housing, and the governor, set these whole, you know slightly looser guidelines to be able to build more into the homes. As I was talking to Paul earlier today, he mentioned, what is the big difference? So the big difference is setbacks, for the most part, in parking. So before, you were able to, I was talking to my wife Yolanda. She said my dad was building those in the 70s. Well, the answer is yes. They've been around for many years. The problem is that you needed parking space. You needed, very strict setbacks, meaning how far back from your neighbor and how far back from the side of your home you would be able to build. And now they made it a lot more loosey goosey, to the point that you can build quite a bit within a lot. Okay. Um, there are many other guidelines that came about in a few other small, not small laws, big laws that came into effect in 2025 that he'll go over as well, that can help you even maximize further. Example, one of the bigger ones that came about is, let's assume that you purchase a property that has an ADU, but it's not legal. Now the cities must find a way to help you legalize them. Before, they would ask you to, tear them down and start fresh and submit and do everything else. So a bunch of those things are coming into effect, which are making things a lot easier. So um, if you have any specific questions, we'll ask, those questions at the end. He'll go over some basic presentations right now, where you guys have in front of you, where we're going to talk about the types of ADUs, which are garage conversions, detached ADUs, attached ADUs, above garage ADUs, and JADUs. They're called junior ADUs. If you live in your own home as your primary residence, you do have the ability, for the most part, to build an ADU and a junior ADU, which is pretty exciting. So whenever we're submitting, any type of permitting, we always ask the question, will the city allow us to build a junior ADU and an ADU? Why? Because if you're already submitting for permits, might as well look and see how you can maximize it, because more than likely the reason why you want an ADU is either to have family members with you or income generation. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'll have Tang help us go through our to his presentation, and we can go from there.
Thanks, Silver, for the introduction. So, supposed to be very informal presentation. So feel free to cut me off and ask me questions anytime. So I'll just generally go over the type of ADU and get it very clear out with a clear definition for each type, so you can understand it. Um, the garage conversion, we call it garage conversion, but actually it actually it's a simple name, because you can literally can convert anything within your property into an ADU, a barn, a carport, attic, basement. Um, the advantage of garage conversion is very cost effective. You already have the structure right there. You have the foundation, have all the wall, all the element. and have no maximum size. It just really depends on the existing footing of your structure. There's no solar requirement. You know that starting in 2021 in California in particular, any new structure, any new single dwelling resident, you're required to put in solar. But with the garage conversion, you already have the structure there, so you're not required to have the solar panel because the rationale is you build a new structure that you have to reinforce, making sure it's safe to put in solar. But this is an existing structure. You don't want you don't want to the state doesn't force you to reinforce your roof and make sure that you have solar in there. Um, it doesn't require the replacement of the packing and is most environmental friendly. Look, as an engineer, I don't want to put any more carbon footprint into the existing environment as possible, and this is one of the way to contribute our fair share of reducing the carbon footprint. Oh, there's a difficulty associated with garage conversion too. It's because you already have a well-defined geometry. It doesn't allow too much of creativity. You got to work with what you have. Of course, you lose the ability to park your car, and you also depend on the type of the age of the structure. If the structure is not adequate and we can find out by paying a structural engineer a small fee, or you can do your own investigation to see if it is structurally sound to convert into a habitable unit. Then it might cost higher. So make sure to do your due diligence. Ask somebody, some professional, to come in, give you a quick check whether or not the structure is sound before you start spending too much money, and and all of a sudden you got hit with unexpected costs. Uh, the next one, I would say, the luxury of ADU is called detached ADU. Um, of course, it allows the most flexibility and very popular among any homeowner and building and property owner. But of course, it comes with a price tax. The advantage is it was the most customizable customization opportunity, a very attractive ADU for home buyer and investor. Because now all of a sudden, if you have a detached ADU, you have another source of income. While if you provide fencing and privacy, you now have two sources of income. You have the main resident and you have a detached ADU. And it again emphasize on the flexibility in design, it's easier for complex property. The disadvantage or cons is the high price tax. Of course, you lose your yard. Literally, you lose at least at least to. And again, I'll go into detail about that, but um, to be simple, just say you probably going to build a detached ADU about between 10 feet away from your structure. So you lose that much yard, and you also have to be 4 feet setback from the rear. So take a look at your backyard and see how much room from your back wall to the fence. And of course, you want an ADU with appropriate size. So if you come up with something like 18 feet, 20 feet, then the detached ADU become too narrow. Again, that's something that we can definitely help. Just give us your address, and we can do a Google area search, and we'll give you a really rough estimation at the beginning.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
okay. As far as the existing electricity and the water and gas,
yeah.
how do we accommodate them? Do they have to run a new line for each one of them, or we can use the existing drainage? We can use the existing electrical because it's gonna put the load on the existing system.
Exactly. So we will have to check what do you have existingly. What is your existing electrical meter size? Is this 100 amp or 200 amp? Now,
You're saying that we can tap to the existing electrical
if the existing electrical line is adequate, then we can certainly tap into the existing electrical
There's
line.
one situation that you have to decide when you're dealing with a detached ADU is you want to decide whether you want your services to be together or separate.
Right.
So if you want them together, the chances are that your current electrical panel is not going to support enough for you to have a a dual another structure. So either one or two things. If you want to keep your existing and just connect to each other, you're probably going to have to upgrade your current panel to maybe a 200 amp panel and then basically run a sub panel over to the next property.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to have a separate meter, you can do that because typically the city can provide you a separate address with separate utilities for the most part. You can even have a second water meter if you want to. In some cases, you can have separate gas. We've typically done no gas on our ADUs because the gas company tends to be a little more difficult to work with.
Yeah,
They do require to do that. So we try to eliminate 100% of all the gas because the new structure is going to have solar anyway. So if you have solar, you want to have you can have a everything inside the new
Electric.
ADU could be solar.
Yep.
Could be electricity, but you can choose to do that whether you want it separate or together.
So in terms of the sewer connection, so it's easily recommend that you run a separate sewer line and you tap into the main lateral coming into your house because you try to avoid any issue with the existing line. If you tap into the existing line and you have clogging issue, and you don't want to cause the ADU have the same problem. Yep.
But this would have, I'm sorry, because it says if it's new, it has to have solar, right? So then
It's new. It have to have solar.
solar, pretty much.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, but regardless of solar, still requires the connection to
Your house.
the
Yep.
panel. So it's not because you have solar, it means that you don't have the connection. You must have the connection still.
Yep.
You can have it separate.
Yeah, so I've finished. I mean, I just mentioned to Silver. I finished. Literally, I got a final inspection today for a project in Thousand Oak. My client built a 1,000 square feet detached ADU, and only the detached ADU have solar.
Right.
He doesn't need to. He's not required to install solar on his main house because in order for him to install solar on his main house, he needs to reinforce his roof. Yeah, structurally to take the
and
load
when you're
of the
building
solar.
the new one, your roof will be structurally sound to be able to add the solar because that's part of the requirement.
Yep.
So
Yep.
when he's doing all the engineering, he'll factor that already in there, if that makes sense, for the weight.
Give us some feedback on the water system.
What's that?
Water.
The water system, I mean, it's not required that you have a separate meter,
But you can.
but you can if you want,
Yeah.
but you got to go through all the.
So
It's
you have
a
to apply.
difficult
You have to
process.
apply with the city, and the city has to. We're doing that right now. And if any of you guys are interested, we can always take you to one of our live projects if you want to, so you can see the progress and how it is. But
Yeah.
you do pay a little extra to the city. And for example, the one in Oxnard, we just did it, and you have to go through like a slightly different process where you pay for the additional, I guess, connection, and then the city has to go and cut and do everything else, and then your contractor will connect to that. But yeah, it's actually a very
Elaborate process.
elaborate but simple process at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes for some particular area in Oxnard, I have a client who actually you want to build an ADU, but when he tried to reach out to the water company say, we just max out. We cannot add any more clients, so you screw.
That's an El Rio.
Yeah, yeah. So where we highest price test loose, yes. Solar panel required and might have additional challenge with zoning and permitting. The third option is an attached ADU. So attached ADU is literally the name says but most often is it popular among homeowner who wanting to have a family member to move in with them because the disadvantage. I mean, I jumped to the disadvantage of this right away because attached ADU you don't want a stranger like to your literally live next to you. They're like just on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So it's not very popular among investor or owner who want to generate more income, but it's more like you bring in your old family member and want to share, give them a place to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, solar panel is not required. It space optimization because you're not building any new structure on only multi-generation living. The con is noise, privacy concerns, of course. Yeah, share utility bill and potential disruption during construction. And I mean, I usually joke with my clients that if I do a attached ADU, I want you to move out during construction. Otherwise, by the end of the project, you're gonna hate me, because with all the dust and the noise. I mean, sometimes we try to keep it clean, but I mean, our worker would just throw trash, and like you get really annoyed with that. And the fourth option is above garage ADU, which is pretty great. Um, it's an option that preserves your garage space. You can still park your car. It offers privacy and noise separation. Again, solar panel is not required. It potentially can offer scenic view, especially if you have your property up in the hill somewhere in like Camarillo, or right next to the ocean along Hollywood Beach or Silver Strand Beach, because you elevate it so you have the whole 360-degree view. I have to warn you though, it's one of the most expensive options. And you do require to have a professional, a structural engineer come in, verify your foundation, make sure it's adequate, because now you're putting more load onto the existing structure, and also making sure all the framing of the garage is adequate. And it's sometimes the utility can be difficult to install, because now you're draining. You need to provide a connection for drainage, water, electrical, from upstairs going through the garage. And one way is to build a soffit, so you lose some space in your garage, unless you wouldn't mind seeing all the sewer pipes just right at the time you drive into your garage. Um, and it's not suited for tenant and family member who elderly. Of course, you don't want to walk upstairs because stairs is a requirement. So some, like Silver mentioned, there's some exciting new regulation that make ADU become more and more attractive. And it took effect in January 1st of this year. The first one is called multifamily ADU. The other one is called unpermitted ADU or amnesty ADU, which Silver mentioned is like if you have any illegal ADU you built before 2020. Before this bill came out, basically the state limit anything before 2019, but now they're extending to 2020. If you build as long as, and I go into detail when I touch into that slide. The first one is SB 1211 multifamily ADU. I borrowed this cartoon from California YIMBY. Basically, if you have a multifamily lot and you have an existing multi-unit structure, again, it have to be a multi-unit structure, then by this law, by this regulation, you can build up to maximum 8 units.
So let's say that you have a duplex, you can build two more.
Yeah.
If you have a triplex, you can build 3 more. If you have a fourplex, you can build 4 more. If you have an eightplex, you can build 8 more. Now, you gotta have the space, number one, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta have the space, and you gotta have all the needed adequate space for that. But it is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, we touched base on that. So I want to touch on the second point is, if you propose to build, if you have a vacant lot and that lot is zoned for multifamily building, you can literally build a duplex and 2 ADU at the same time. Because that law allows you to do that. And it eases up the requirement for parking, and it basically prohibited local agency or HOA imposing in any of their own agenda or policy regulation to make your ADU development harder because they got to comply to this law. Again, have to be a clear distinction. A multi-family dwelling is a structure with two more attached dwelling on a single lot. A multi-detached single unit dwelling is not considered a multi-family. So the other regulation is AB 2533. I call it amnesty ADU. Again, we touched base on that. Any illegal quote unquote ADU or JADU built before January 1st, 2020, as long as it passed the health and safety regulation, not the building code, but just the health and safety regulation, then the city will grant you the permit for that ADU. And the local agency must inform homeowner about this permit option, and homeowner will receive a checklist and what qualify as substandard condition. And as long as you correct all the substandard condition, you all may grant the permit, and you also don't have to pay for the impact fee. And if you have, as a homeowner, you can choose to have a third-party inspection performed by either a licensed contractor or an engineer to be an independent evaluator. If you believe the city is just being too strict or is unfair. Yeah, the local agency cannot charge impact fee. Prohibited local agency from preventing anybody apply for the permit. And then a third one, which is coming up, it's making easier for the development of ADU along the coastal zone, which not really clear guidance right now, but it's coming in 2026. Now, with that, I mean, just a little bit commercial about myself. I'm a licensed engineer in I think 11 states, and it's coming actually four more states, North Dakota, Virginia. I'm also licensed general contractor in California and Los Angeles and Louisiana. So the benefit of doing the design for you is that you're getting a design by both an engineer and a contractor. So everything is very practical. Because when I take a look at your potential project, I look at where the sewer, where the electrical, where the water, how to make the floor plan, organize the floor plan. I mean, in terms of most cost effective for you to connect to your existing underground utility. And I put my hands on a contractor because if I have to do the project, how I do it efficiently. Yep. And with that, yes, we are one-stop shop. Just reach out to us. Here's a Monday man right here.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If they wanted to reach out to you, is there a cost for you to go out there and give them an idea of what it would, what can they do?
So the first initial meeting, there's no cost. I mean, part of my overhead. But then, I mean, if you don't want to take advantage of that and say, hey, you come in again. I mean, then I have to charge you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't eat a lot, so.
Yeah.
So yes,
he's on a diet, so.
So I mean, after the initial meetings, every time I have to come out, I charge my engineering rate about $185, $190 per hour.
So FYI, if you guys want to make some real money, become an engineer.
I do come with liabilities also.
Is that your number on the?
Yes. And the way I work is I break down my design package into 3 different payments. The retainer amount. Then when I'm done creating a draft floor plan and site plan, we bounce it back to you as a homeowner and my client, and you are my client. We go back and forward to make sure we optimize the floor plan, the design, and we'll bring it back. Then I'll go with all of the structural design, Title 24, which is energy calculation requirement by the state. And then when we have the entire package ready for submittal, then I charge you another 30 or 40%. And I'll take care of submitting the plan check package. You pay for all of the application fee, of course, and pay for all of the printing fee, the sad thing about the city, I mean, not sad thing, but the thing about city of Oxnard, which is they still in the Stone Age, they, they don't accept electronic copy. So it's costing you another couple $100 to print the physical copy and bring it over there and submit to them. Um, and no matter how many plan check, I'm responsible for
Revisions.
all the revision at no additional cost, no additional charge to you until the entire plan get approved. And at that time, I collect my remaining amount.
Do you take care of all the permits and stuff as well? Is that what that means, or we do that as well?
So I do the application of the plan check. So the process is this: you got to go through the plan check. You submit the application for the permit, and when the plan check is approved, then the city will call you in and say, okay, you need to pay this, that, and you need to take care of some of the form.
But
Then,
to make it simple, yes,
yeah,
he takes care of 90% of it. You are required to choose whether you want a licensed contractor to represent you or yourself. You can pull permits as owner operator, and you will have to fill out most of the forms. Forms are super simple. I promise you. He'll guide you through the process of what else. More than likely, he'll fill out most of them. You just have to sign them. Basically, take them into the city because they want to know that if you're the owner builder. They want to see that you're submitting them,
yeah,
but it's a very simple process. And then there are many other small steps that you as an owner builder as a non-contractor will have to deal with, such as connecting all the electricity and stuff like that. But we can always guide you through that process. It's
yeah,
not as difficult as it sounds. And truthfully, this is a learning experience. You basically, as you go, you learn something new. There hasn't been one time that we haven't learned something. Even together, we're like, oh man.
yeah. So each city is different. I mean, they have maybe one or two
And also,
additional
please
requirements.
take in consideration that there is potentially another process that is a fire,
Yeah.
the fire approval as well.
Yes, yes. So with the state of California, so your plan will be reviewed by planning division
Hmm.
to make sure you comply to all the setback at the maximum height and the required interior yard. And then the building and safety, which review for architectural compliant with the building code and structural compliant. And then the third agency is the Ventura County or Oxnard County or Oxnard City of Oxnard Fire
Hmm.
Department to comply with the fire California fire code, like the building separation, the duration of your wall if you're very close to each other, and a smoke alarm and all of that. Yeah.
And also, some cities may have additional quirky things. We just went through the process in the city of Port Hueneme, where they required us to hire an additional company so they can do a fire flow test, which means that by adding a new additional unit to the street, it needs to be compliant with having enough water for the fire hydrants to be able to work. So I had to hire a company to do that, which is not cheap. It's $500 just to hire them, $200 for the application fee, and they have to go through it. But I mean, it was pretty seamless. And then after that was completed, then it goes to the fire marshals again, and they basically give you an approval. But they give us an approval pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just have to be patient, and every city is a little bit different, and it does require for you to submit a clean file up front. So that's why having real conversations with him, and his team will help you expedite the process. Do we want to talk? Go ahead.
Can you talk about the differences in the city's requirements? Because I was started in ADU in Oxnard, and the requirements were incredibly high.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a different project through the county in San Luis Valley, and they were much cheaper.
Yeah.
So, do you know which cities are more difficult, more lenient?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, my experience is in terms of I'm speaking is different process. So in terms of plan check, all city, I mean, almost the same because they use the ICC, which is International Building Code Plan Examiner, so they have the same standard. Um, the city of Oxnard, in particular, they're not difficult, but because there's a long list of people applying for ADU, so it's longer process. So I would say that
So it's about seven to 10 times more than any other city.
yeah. So I would say it's like in terms of difficulty, all city are the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all the requirements are the same? Because
I mean,
I've
generally,
Okay.
generally it's the
Yeah.
same.
But you're talking about county and city.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, the county and city will have slight differences because county will also incorporate situations like rural areas and so on and so forth. So it's going to be slightly different. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely rating from the most difficult down. You're probably talking about Oxnard being obviously not the most difficult for the lengthiest out of all, for sure. Then second one probably will be the city of Ventura. They're not difficult, but they're obviously not easy in that sense. And then from there, you start going down. Obviously,
Yeah.
probably the best one that I personally dealt with is gonna be Camarillo. Extremely easy. Second one was almost pretty perfect, as close as Camarillo was City of Port Hueneme. Everybody talked horribly about him, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. It's
Yeah.
perfect. He was able to get me a permit from 0 days to fully completed in about 60 days, which is incredible. And then we got a from 0 to fully approved in Camarillo about 45 days or less. Every city has different quirky requirements. You have to be careful about that, and you also have to check. We had a personal experience in Camarillo that basically took us on a little loop. The property that we purchased as an investment, it was actually in the Camarillo fault zone. It was actually in an
Mm.
earthquake zone. I never had ever dealt with that before. Never even I thought about that. And obviously, my wife is a realtor. She did mention that to me.
So when you purchase a property, you do receive something called a natural hazard disclosure. That's called, it's an NHD. And so, oh, you need this? Oh, okay, okay, I guess, okay. So you receive a natural hazard disclosure, okay, but the city supersedes that. Okay, and I'm a real estate broker, and I had never heard of that. So we learned it like on our own. And Silver could take over and tell you what that means there. So when we went back on this property that he's talking about, it's on Sun. I don't know if you guys are how familiar you are. It's off of Antonio and Camarillo. It said that it was not like on a fault zone, but the city said yes, it is. So the city supersedes. So just a little heads up: if you're buying a property with that intention, please do your due diligence and also check with the city. Just wanted to share that. Jump in there and hopefully that helps you some as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's also going to impact time and fees as well. So with the city, with the city.
Remember that by having a conversation with Tang, you'll be able to do that. And I also encourage everybody to go to the city yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. They're
Yeah.
super nice. They're super easy to work with. I mean, you go there and say like, "Hey, I'm interested in building an ADU." Okay, what would you like to know? Well, I like to know if I can. Sure, sit down.
Yeah.
And they start pulling everything up. They start looking up, the requirements, what setbacks and where it is. But just to finish my story, that Yolanda helped out, they were giving us a little bit of a like a runaround, like, hey, I don't think you can build. And I'm like, why not? It's because you have to go through a different process. So they required us to do a soils report, which is a very intricate report. But the interesting part is that the city of Camarillo didn't want to see the soils report. They said, I don't want to see it because if I do, then we basically are going to ask you for way more things. So I'm like, so how do I go about doing that? They're like, well, you have to figure it out because you have to do something called a compaction report. So a compaction report means that you have to compact the actual soil for your foundation so much, depending on their specifications. But in order for that report to happen, you need to have a soils report. So we ended up finding a local company in Ventura, a very intelligent man that has been doing that for many years, and he's like, I got you. I know exactly what to do. We're gonna do a minimized or like a half soils report, so you don't have to present the whole thing. That would allow you to do the compaction report, and then the compaction took place, which was extremely unique. We dug in about maybe 5 or 6 feet down in a 45-degree angle, and every 8 inches they had to compact it, and the city had to go and make sure that there's like a stick that they basically stick in there,
Yeah.
and if it goes more than like a couple of inches, it's not good. So they have to do it again and again. It was quite interesting. But again, now it's that structure is bulletproof because we dug in so much. Yes.
Another thing, guys, I'm not gonna go bother.
Okay.
Movie trap over there. I'm not gonna lie. Another thing I wanted to mention is so they were still gonna approve the ADU, right?
Right.
But it was just gonna have to be connected somehow.
Oh, with an awning.
Yes, it was still gonna just have to be connected. So they would have still approved it. Like if the soil or whatever, they wouldn't have approved it, but we sort of could have done the ADU, but it would just have to be connected to the actual like
Structure.
To the actual structure.
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just different ways and just anyway. So but good thing it passed and everybody has like their own
Yeah.
privacy. So now we're
Yeah, but if you're
that.
100% ready to do something, it costs you $0. They're only open Monday through Friday here, Monday through Thursday in Oxnard from 8 to 12. Don't try to go after 12. You're not going to
Yeah.
get a hold of anybody.
Yeah.
You better be there at 8 so you can actually wait 3 hours before you can get someone. But I mean, that's the truth. But you can sit down there and you can talk to someone, and they're very polite. They're very helpful. One other thing that you have to keep in consideration on the detached ADUs is that there are certain maximum amount of standard square feet that you can do on a structure. What I mean by that is they have a 749 square feet or 750 square feet as a standardized process where you go through the standard process is like a speedy process if you want to call it that way, and their fees are a little bit less expensive. What I mean by less expensive is when you go over 750 square feet, some cities now they allow up to 800,
Yeah.
but 750, you have to pay impact fees. Impact fees are additional fees imposed, on the actual permitting process. The impact fees will double or triple the cost of your ADU initial submission. Example, in Oxnard, if you're paying 13,000, I just paid 36,000. I just literally paid it. But aside from paying impact fees, you have to pay to two additional entities in Oxnard. I'm only speaking about Oxnard because I haven't done it anywhere else. This ADU that we're building is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's a 2-story and it's about 1,200 square feet. They basically you have to pay the Oxnard School District and the Oxnard Elementary School District the fee per square feet. It could range between $2 and $3 a square foot, something like that. So I think I ended up paying both entities, Oxnard School District and the Oxnard whatever, one of those unions. I was a total of about $7,000 or $8,000 total for causing an impact of whatever sort. I don't know exactly what that means, but you still have to go through the same process of going to the city and requesting their authorization. But if it's below 750, there's a zero cost involved. They just sign off on that paper. Yeah. Now, what would you want to pay 30 some thousand or 40 some thousand for permitting, if you can pay only 10, 12, 13,000? Well, because building a 12, 1,300 square foot ADU, I basically have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, where normally you can build a 2-bedroom, 1-bath or 2-bedroom, 2-bath, which will be a little tight in 700 square feet. But the cost associated with renting it, for example, you go from like 22, 23, maybe 25, I don't know, or whatever you want to call it. But then you go into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, which now it's an average of 30 some $100, per month. So with that in mind, if I'm charging an additional 1,000 or 12 or $1,500, if I multiply that by a year and a half or 2 years, I'm already caught up, and I have many, many more years of basically of being able to increase my potential of income over time, if that makes sense. So don't be so afraid of the cost associated with impact fees up front. If you have the ability to build a little bit more and you have the financial ability to do it, just do the cost analysis. Most people just say, oh my god, it's too expensive to do this, but nobody thinks about, hey, you're going to earn that very, very quickly. And when you're building a structure of, 800 or 750 square feet or 1,200, think about this for a second. You just pouring a little bit more concrete. You just putting a little bit more of a structure. It's going to cost more, but it's not substantially different where you're like, oh my god, it's going to cost me another 150 or $200,000 more, if that makes sense. So take that into consideration when you're thinking about building is the size of the unit that you're building. Obviously, the smaller the size, a little more compact, a little faster, less material, less cost associated. but then always have that in mind. Um, if you own a property right now and you want to maximize your income, in theory, you can build an ADU and a junior ADU. We didn't go too much in detail into the JADU, but a JADU is a 500 average square foot addition that is attached to your property. It could be already existing, or you can build onto it. Let's assume for a second that you have, for example, a nice size yard, and you have enough space for an ADU. Everything's already there, but you also have enough for another. Let's say, imagine a nice big master bedroom. 400 or 500 square feet is big. You know, probably two times the size of this. You can easily put a nice sized bedroom, walk-in closet, a bathroom, washer and dryer, a kitchen, and a living space. And those are renting right now an average of between $1,700 and $2,100. And it's 500 square feet, and it's attached to your property. And since it's attached to the property, it tends to be a little less expensive. That is if you're interested in having, like Tang said, do that. But most cities will not allow you to do that if you're thinking of renting the property. You don't live in the property. That's what I mean. So if you bought it as an investment and you do not live in the property while you're constructing that, then they won't allow you to do the JDU, because that's typically for owner occupancy only. Okay.
What if you leave later? Is that a thing? Or?
I don't know that. That's a great question. I've asked that question. I've been told, two different answers. Nobody can hold you up to it, of course. You know what I mean? Like, you have to leave. You have to leave. Um, I never seen or heard anybody literally like be in trouble because of that. But again, you just always have to do your due diligence. Also, make sure your insurance carrier, that's the most important, that like your current insurance is aware that you're no longer living there as a primary, so you can change the actual policy to a correct policy, because that's another big thing. Also, take into consideration that anytime you're building into your home, it's going to affect your property taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have not thought about that, you have to add that into the equation. How much is it? Obviously, average California tax is 1.25. It's $1.20. 1.25% of every square feet or whatever. So if you're building more, so you're probably talking about an average of another $800 to $1,000 more a year. In property taxes, your insurance costs will also increase a tad bit, because now you have more than one structure, and you should always check in with your insurance carrier to make sure that the insurance will be okay with that. And as far as the value is concerned, a lot of people feel like, doing the construction on a property may increase the value of your home. That could be true, but it could also not be true. The thing is that constructing, additional units in your property means that if you're trying to do an appraisal, you have to have an appraiser that knows how to find units identical to yours. As a lender, if you basically say, oh, I want to compare, I want to do an appraisal, but I don't have any comparables with an ADU, the chances are that I will not accept those appraisals, because while you do have more square footage, you want me to give value to the property because there's an ADU. That doesn't necessarily grant you that. So think about that for a second. Building an ADU does not necessarily increase the value of your home. It could, if more than a few have sold and have the same feature as what you have. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory. It's like earrings. Do you need them? No, but you like them, right? You know what I mean? A watch. Do you need it? No, but it's an accessory. Okay, that's exactly what an accessory dwelling unit is, and it could bring up the value, but it could also not. It all depends on where you're at. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any other questions so far for our engineer?
So I
Or
did
for
run
me?
into a project in Santa Ana when I designed a detached ADU, 1,200 square feet, and a junior ADU, 467 square feet. And the city of Santa Ana required my client to notarize what is called a covenant,
Of course.
covenant of occupancy. So they do. So they don't care about the ADU, but the junior ADU is required that you promise to the city you're gonna reside in the
They
main
record a
residence.
document in a few
Yeah.
words.
But if they enforce them, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that you gotta have it. We're building one in they approved it, as a matter of fact, in Ventura. I was I was a lot newer at this than now, and Yolanda did tell me you should ask because that I heard. I obviously didn't listen to my wife. I did not listen to my wife, and we went through the whole thing, and then sure enough, you know what I mean. So yeah, always listen to your wife. The next thing here is going to be financing, right? Everybody's first question is how it's financing, and that's part of the situation that we're here. So for the most part, financing is not readily available just for an ADU, right? You can't say like, oh, I want to finance an ADU and I want to just get a construction loan for an ADU. Well, it's because it's a single family residence for the most part, is not necessarily a commercial loan. When you are asking for a commercial, loan is for a commercial property. Therefore, you have a couple of different choices. And the three choices that are most common right now is your traditional cash out refinance, which basically you grab the existing balance of what you have and add on top of that at current interest rates, and you have a brand new loan for a higher loan amount, if that makes sense. So you replace your original loan with a larger loan, and you have a amortized loan for 30 years. And typically, hopefully, you have enough equity for you to do that, because maximum cash out for the most part is 80% of the value of the home. So you are required to have plenty of equity on the property. Why is this popular and why is not popular in low rate environments? This is the most popular loan option, because if you have a 3% and we can lend you at 3% and you have one single loan and your payment only goes up 300-500 bucks, oh my goodness. And then you're earning $2,000-3,000 over here, is like, what the heck? It's a no-brainer. But in high rate environments, and when somebody has a low interest rate on their first mortgage, people question whether they should do that or not. So for that, if you have a low interest rate on your first mortgage and you do have equity on your property, then there's two additional choices. One of them being the equity line of credit, which is your most traditional HELOC. A HELOC basically, it's like a credit card against your home, in which you basically borrow up to a percentage of the value of your home as well. Equity lines of credit can go up to 89.9% of the value of the home, which makes them more flexible if you don't have an enormous amount of equity. And basically, it works exactly as a credit card. You basically have a $150,000 line of credit, and you are only going to do construction in phases. Construction goes in phases. So you go through the first initial phase where you need, foundation, plumbing, blah, blah, blah. So you only take out enough from that equity line of credit for you to do that. And then it takes a little bit longer, and then you take, framing, rough work, blah, blah, blah. So over time, you can take a little bit of money off of that. What are the positives of that? Is that it gives you flexibility of borrowing. You don't have to borrow the whole entire thing. It gives you flexibility of payments. Typically, you're only paying the interest only. What is the other flexible thing is that typically you can just literally transfer money same day, as if you had savings and checkings. You want to, transfer money from your savings to your checking, and it's available right away. What are the negatives to that? Is an adjustable rate mortgage. For the most part, most equity lines of credit are adjustable. When the rates are high, equity lines are high. When the rates are low, it's phenomenal. The other thing is that you're only paying interest only, which means that if you don't budget yourself correctly, you're going to end up paying just interest for a long period of time. And that could also be a problem.
You're only paying interest?
Interest only for the most part on the equity lines of credit. It's exactly, well, it all depends on the terms of your equity line of credit. But again, the reason why you do an equity line of credit is because you are capable of budgeting yourself, of sending more money towards the principal, so you can pay it off as quickly as you want, right? So if you're not pre-planning on that, then you basically have a big problem, because you may go through 5 years, 7 years, or whatever, and not paying anything towards the principal, and your balance is still the same. I guess in theory is no big deal, but it could be at one point in time. So that's the negative of an equity line of credit. And then for people that are not very, I guess, in favor of adjustable rate mortgages or flexible payments or whatever you want to call it, there's something called a HELoan, which is basically a HELOAN, HELOAN, basically. So a HELOAN is a fixed rate second, is your most traditional second option, second mortgage option. It's been in operation for many, many years. You say, well, Silverio, I need 150,000. We do $150,000 loan. You tell me you want it for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I don't recommend anything over 20 years. And then you know from day zero how much is your payment to the last day. There's no prepayment penalties. You basically make a mortgage payment just the same way as you do your first. And that basically is your HELOAN. It's a fixed rate second mortgage. Pros, you know exactly.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Do we have to refinance the original loan?
With the first option, yes. With the other two options that I'm sharing with you, sir, no. You leave your first mortgage alone. These two options, the equity line of credit or HELOC or the HELOAN, do not require for you to touch your first mortgage. That's why they're more enticing if you have a low interest rate in your first mortgage. So finishing on the HELOAN, the negatives to the HELOAN is that you get the lump sum of money right away and you start basically, you know, accruing interest and paying interest. I don't see very many other negatives to that, because obviously, if you have a good budget up front, if you already know ahead, hey, this is what it's going to cost me and I'm going to stick to that. And if I don't stick to the budget, I do have a little extra savings myself, to try to cover. Because whenever a contractor tells you 100, you should always have a contingency of maybe 10 to 15%, extremely conservatively supposed to have probably more like 20 or 25 if I was in your shoes, just in case, because there's so many things that change. Obviously now we're dealing with tariffs, we're dealing with increases, we're dealing with this, we're dealing with that. During COVID, we um, just the cable alone, went from 45 $50 to $180 a roll. I was a 4 or 5 times the cost. You know what I mean? 2x4s were $2, and then all of a sudden we're $8 to $12. You know what I mean? So you can't control that, but you also don't want to leave your project. You know what I mean? Halfway, so you have to continue to have that slight contingency. Um, so basically, those are your three financing options that are currently available right now that would be the most suitable for most immediate building, and they all require for you to have primarily equity on your property, number one. Number two, you must have a decent credit score. For the vast majority of the time, you must have a 700 plus FICO score to qualify for these. And the process takes an average of 30 to 45 days to fund any of these transactions. But again, remember what Tang was saying, you don't need to have all this money up front. You don't need it immediately. You're going to meet with him and he's going to split the cost in three different payments. um, I'm not going to speak for his fees, but I'm going to speak for my fees that I've paid. So you can get an average. They range between $45 and $9,000, in fees. So if you really think about it, let's go right in the middle. Let's say $7,000 or $8,000. You're like 25, 25, 25. So I mean, for the most part, most of us will have the ability to come up with like 2-3 grand just to kind of get started, and 2-3 grand to get in the, you know what I mean? So every time that Tang is going to tell you, hey, we started the process, it may take an average of 30 to 45 days before you start submitting anything to the city. And it could be faster if you are on top of it yourself, because Tangwell has a team of people that are just pretty close to amazing. He tells them, hey, this is what I need, boom, 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 and they send it to you. You're like, oh shoot, now what do I do with this? And you start looking at it, right? You're like, oh my god, this is real. And then you start talking about, where is the location of the windows? Do I like it like this? Do I want my door to be here? Do I want the stairs to be here? You know what I mean? And then you have a conversation with him, and then he tells you, yeah, everything looks great, I like that. You say yes. Then he starts working on the engineering, title 24, and then basically you start in the process of submitting, where you're more than likely going to get together with him to go and submit the documents all at once, because you have to physically fill out and sign forms as owner operator. Or if you do have a contractor, which he is a contractor and he can provide you a bid, he is licensed to do that if you wanted to. You're not bound to use him whatsoever, but if you need it, that service, he can provide it to you as well.
I have a question.
Sure.
Going back to the HELOC.
Yeah.
It's what did I write down? Adjustable interest rate, but
Correct.
that's to like adjustable as in like for housing, right?
So basically, the Fed rate today is 7.5%. So
Okay.
basically, when you hear the Feds drop the rate and so on and so forth, that's basically linked to that. So most of us think that when the Feds drop rates, they drop rates for all mortgages, but it's not. It's for adjustable rate mortgages, equity lines of credit, like the ones we're talking about, car loans, student loans, credit cards, and so on and so forth. So definitely we do have a low rate environment in my opinion coming up based on all the suggested. So every bank is going to be at a minimum of 7.5% plus some type of an earning fee that they have. If you have a competitive equity on your home, like lots of equity, and you have great credit, there are banks right now that are doing the 7.5 minus a fee. So I have a bank right now that is doing like 6.99, for example, instead of 7.5. But you can only go to 80% of the value of the home. And there are other banks that will let you go up to 90% that will charge you 7.5 plus 1, 2, up to 3 points on top of that. So you're going to be paying 8, 9, 10, 11%, depending on how aggressive you want to go with your line of credit.
And then the P loan is obviously just a fixed whatever it happens
Correct.
to be then and there.
That's it. Yeah.
Can you refinance that or no?
You can.
Okay.
You can. For the most part, you can. Obviously, it will all really depend on whether it's worth for you to pay all the fees to refinance because it's a mortgage. In a HE loan, you must have title, escrow. We're in California, obviously. If you were in another state, they would utilize different other agencies. But here, you need title, escrow, more than likely an appraisal or a shorter type of an appraisal called AVM. So there's fees involved with that. Yeah. So I don't know if refinancing a second mortgage would be really worth it.
And then my last question, do permits expire?
Yes,
Yes.
they certainly do. And I just went through that right now. Absolutely. He's helping me with one. Yes.
Permit usually is about 180 days after they get all the approval.
Oh,
And you do have the ability
Extension.
to find an extension,
okay.
which is a nominal fee, not that much.
Yeah. During COVID, we built an ADU in Ventura. Um, Everything with permitting and everything else. We went through the whole entire process. The inspector came over, basically for the last inspection, and he said, "Hey, I noticed that you guys moved the panel," and we're like, "Yeah, you were aware of that. You asked us to move it 3 inches to the side because blah blah." He's like, "Yeah, I know, but you have to get a permit for that."
Oh my.
And we're like, "Dude, like you're the one that asked us to move it. Like we're not changing anything. No, you need to get a permit." So that time during COVID, in order for you to submit a permit, you literally had to submit permits to the city, and then they would send it over to a company to disinfect them, and
Yeah.
then bring them back. And then before they give them back to you, they would have to be disinfected again, and then blah blah blah. And then we couldn't get in the house, so on and so forth. To be honest with you, I completely forgot about it. So a new tenant, a tenant moved out, a new tenant came in. Our lovely neighbor, our lovely neighbor calls the city on us because we're doing painting, to bring it back. And the guy goes over, he's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "We're painting." It's like,
The
"Okay,
permit.
yeah, but your ADU is illegal."
Yeah.
What do you mean your ADU? My ADU is, bro? Like we have an address, we have, city of Ventura is like your ADU is illegal. You never completed the final. I'm like, okay, bro. Like it was like literally that last thing. He's like, yeah, because of that, everything's expired and you have to resubmit again, and you need to do this, you need to do that. Anyway, to make the long story short, that's what Tang was told.
Yeah.
They obviously told him the truth. I went in and had a little bit of a sweeter talk with someone else, and I was a little more persuasive. And I said, hey, look, it doesn't seem like it's is the right answer, but a really kind gentleman helped me through the process. He basically went to a supervisor, explained to him the process, told him what had happened, and the city supervisor approved an extension of 90 days. Friday, the inspector goes in there, leaves us literally in the house waiting for about 4 hours, and he forgot about us. He never came By the time that I called him and told him, he went back, saw it. He was like, "I'm not gonna do anything." It's like, let's make an appointment for Monday. And during this process, I made an executive decision. I did not listen to my wife, and I asked my crew to build a patio to keep us away from our lovely neighbor that basically complained almost every day about our previous tenants because they were outside. So they saw that I had built a patio without a permit, so they put a stop notice and a red tag, basically a stop notice on the house, which made it even worse. Um, Monday comes about. Grant you, I have tenants moving in on the 13th, which is tomorrow, and they're telling me that it's illegal and I can't rent it. So basically, Monday the guy comes over again. He says, "There's nothing I can do," and I'm like, "Bro, why did you tell me this? Like, it's like there's nothing I can do. You have a stop notice. We're not going to do anything. Your structure is illegal." I'm like,
Is
"Okay."
that like public record, the permits? Or like, how does the neighbor know?
The neighbor didn't know. The neighbor knew that I was doing construction, and she just called to see, yeah, to see if I had a permit to do painting or whatever, which I didn't have, and they just went and investigated, and then obviously everything came about. I made a few phone calls. I got a lot more stern. With supervisors and so on and so forth. Today they went in, and my contractor says that he came in very nice and very calm. He inspected the property, and they gave us a final on it. I still have to remediate the issue of the yard, of the backyard. So whatever you do, guys, this is just a moral of the story. Listen to your wife, number one. Number two, get a permit for everything. Because you're basically, it's not just you, it's your neighbors, it's anybody that sees you and they don't want to see you do well, or even if they do want to see you do well, but they're bothered by the noise or whatever, they're going to call the city. And some people are not nice. I experienced not nice, and I never experienced that before, but luckily, I mean, we were able to fix it. But yeah, make sure you always get a permit for everything that you can. Any other questions regarding financing? Any other questions regarding?
Yeah. Do you have an approximate price per square foot for each option?
For construction or for?
Average day?
With the ADUs, like the junior ADUs.
Oh, it really depends. So it really depends on what's level of finish. I mean, you're talking about average finish or you're talking about high end finish.
Average. Like median.
Yeah. Average Joe.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not. I mean,
Comfortable.
my experience is in Oxnard, Ventura, and Thousand Oak. It's ranging between like 230 up to like 275
That's for ground up construction.
for ground up construction.
30 to 275 per square foot.
Yeah, and of course, like the smaller unit price is is higher. With the bigger ADU, the unit price is
That's
lower.
Is that on top of permits, or that's like kind of all?
That on top of
On
the
top
permit.
of permits.
But is
Yeah.
that for the plan?
The soft fee
Is
is
it
like,
finish work?
excluding appliance.
Right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
appliances is something that so basically, if you have, let's assume for a second that you have a 750 square foot, ADU, and you found somebody that does, just for sake of argument and do numbers, $200 a square foot, that's $150,000. So a 750 square foot can range you between 150 to about 180,000. In the medium, range, you do have people that want to go extremely elaborate and really fancy because their parents are going to live there or something. Then you're spending $350, $400 a square foot. But if you don't have to do that.
Of that fee, approximately what percentage of it is going to permits?
So we separate it. We call it soft fee, soft costs, and construction costs. The construction cost is what I gave you in terms of
So
unit
you're
price.
right now that 150 to 185 or whatever is just the construction alone.
Yeah.
So the permitting and the fees are separate because you really can't control that. That's something that you as a consumer, would have to, even if you wanted to ask the city up front, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. How much is my permit? They're going to tell you,
As it comes up.
I don't know.
Yeah, and until you have a set of plan, then the city will have like take it to the back room. And they run their magic black box, and they have the quote unquote the city appraisal appraisal value of the unit you're gonna build, and they take percentage of that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's the
obviously,
permit fee.
and then you have different costs, whether you want to do it with a licensed contractor, you want to do it, with a someone else that doesn't have necessarily a license, or somebody that already that has done construction or whatever. That could also vary in cost. That could also vary in the time frames that you build, and so on and so forth. Again, also Tank can provide, in theory, be a project manager if in case you wanted to hire your own people, and he just wants to basically, you just want somebody to kind of physically, review the project to make sure everything's good, because he's being a licensed contractor, he has to pay an enormous amount of money and, additional fees, you know what I mean? And when he hires people and so forth. But if you have somebody that you trust, but you just want somebody to review everything that is going on, just ask, and, he'll charge, a fee that it's already predisposition up front.
Well, in terms of design costs, like Silver mentioned, it's ranging between $4,500 to like $9,000, depending on the.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah.
He's extremely fair just because of the simple fact that he does all of it together. I found that most of his cost is about 30% lower than other costs, because you have most people will have the drafter or architecture, and then you have your engineering, and then you have your title 24. There's like three different
So
things.
I like the one-stop shop.
yeah, so I don't have to do like a markup on top of some other people. Yeah.
Yeah, he says he's kind of cool, so
Yeah.
sometimes.
Hopefully.
Any other
Questions?
questions?
So are we ready to go out there and start building ADU?
Gotta save
Yeah.
now.
Depends on depending on your time frame, and so on and so forth, and who you hire. Construction process could be as fast as 60 days, like fully completed, and as average about 3 months to 4 months average. And if you're like micromanaging and macro managing, and trying to change everything all together every time, then you're talking about 6 to 8 months. I normally see homeowners that do not have a lot of experience. They're micro and macro managing everything. Take the 6 to 8 months, and if you have somebody you trust to get you through the process, it's literally 60 to 90 days. Yeah. Like literally for you to be able to just rent it. Like you're good. You will get a different address for the most part. They can get their own, you know, mailbox, and phone. Oh well, who has a phone nowadays? Nobody has.
Yeah, cell phone,
I mean,
cable.
cable or internet. Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else? So far, so good. All right. Well, let me
Okay.
turn this on. But if you